Hola, bienvenidos a mi oficina esta vez. So yeah, in this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about participles, and more specifically the past participle, the participio in Español. And I'm going to try it a little bit differently this time, see if this works with sharing the screen. And let's get right into it. So I think the main thing we got to start off with is to keep in mind that every verb has multiple sort of basic forms. Sometimes they're called principal parts and things like that, right? So in this case, the thing that really matters for us for Spanish is to look at the infinitive, the past participle, and the present participle, just to get an idea, what exactly is the past participle. Give us a little context. So as you can see in Spanish, they're called el infinitivo, participio, and gerundio. First, let's just do a couple of quick examples in English. To walk. We don't really actually have to put the to, but that's okay. Right? So to walk. Right? So the past participle of to walk is going to be walked. So in English, the regular ending of a past participle is ed. And then the present participle, or the gerund, is going to be walking. So in this case, as you can see, we have ing, right? And that's the ending that corresponds to the gerund, and the present participle. So notice also, in a lot of cases in English, the past participle is going to look a lot like the past tense, right? So if I say I walk and then yesterday I walked, right? We can't tell by the form whether it's the past tense or the past participle, right? So we would say I walked, or as a past participle, I have walked. It's the same form. So if we look at a highly irregular verb, like to go, for example, right? We can see here the past tense would be went, but the past participle is going to be gone. So I went somewhere yesterday, but I have gone somewhere. So as you can see, one of the ways you can tell in English is put the word have in front of it, right? So I have gone, I have walked, etc., right? And notice because it's irregular, it doesn't have that ed ending. And then, of course, the present participle is going, and that's regular, right? It has that ing at the end. Let's see one or two more examples. Let's see, how about to swim, right? The past tense is swam, right? I swam yesterday, but technically the past participle is going to be swum, right? I have swum. The present participle, the gerund, is swimming. Let's see, how about another regular one? Talk, right? And so in the past tense, it's going to be talked, but the past participle is also talked. I talked yesterday. I have talked. And then we have talking. And then just one more, just a little similar case. So to speak is the infinitive. And then yesterday I spoke, but I have spoken, right? Spoken. So that's an irregular one. Again, right? Doesn't have the ed ending. And then speaking, just to round it out, right? So now let's look at some examples in Spanish, right? So we've got, we could just use the same ones, or just translate all the ones we just did, right? So to walk, we can say andar or caminar. I'll do caminar. That's the infinitive. And then the past participle, since this is an AR verb, is going to end with ado, right? So caminado, right? And then the gerund, gerundio, the present participle, is going to be caminando. So notice that NDO is equivalent to the English ING. And it's nice because in the word gerundio, or in gerund, we see that ND right in there, right? That kind of makes it a little bit easier to remember. Let's just go down the line. So to go is ir. And so the past tense is going to be, yo fui, tú fuiste. And the past participle is actually just going to be regular, right? It's going to be idle. And so ER and IR verbs end with idle, and AR verbs end with ado. right? And since ir doesn't have anything before the ir, it's just ir, that's the whole thing right there, ido. And then the present participle of that one is going to be yendo, right? And again, it has the NDO there, right? And then swim, so that's nadar. And then we have nadado, because it's an AR verb, so it's ado at the end. And then the present participle is going to be nadando. And then to talk, we got hablar, hablado, and hablando. Now, some irregular ones in Spanish, so similar to like English, gone, swum, and spoken. Let's take, for example, decir. So in this case, it's not decido, right? It's actually dicho. And then we've got diciendo. Notice the present participle is still regular, right? Hacer, hecho, haciendo, right? How about one more? Let's do freír, right? And that's not freído, it's frito, right? And then friendo. And yeah, so we'll leave it at that. So those are the main forms. And notice you just have some that are irregular. The vast majority are going to be regular ado or ido endings, right? But you just have to kind of memorize which ones are the irregular forms that don't end in that common form. And there are some cases which we can look at later, or perhaps in another video, where you have the irregular ending here, but then in some cases you do make it regular, right? So perhaps I'll pull those up another time. So now let's go to this other document I have here for the uses of the participle, right? When are they used and how, right? So the first main use is in perfect tenses, or tiempos perfectos, right? And so the word perfect actually means finished or complete, right? So if something is perfect, you can't do anything more to it. It's completely finished, right? So it naturally, lends itself to being used for talking about the past, right? So let's just go straight into Spanish examples without, but I can translate them into English, right? But basically for the present perfect, we're going to use the present tense of haber, right? Has, ha, hemos, habéis, han, right? So we take the present tense of haber for the present perfect, and then we just add that participle, right? So going back, for decir, for example, right? The participle was dicho. So the present perfect of decir is he dicho, has dicho, ha dicho, hemos dicho, habéis dicho, han dicho. So I have said, you have said, he, she, or it has said, we have said, y'all have said, they have said, or y'all have said. So notice this is haber, and it means to have, right? So I have, and then you add the dicho, he dicho, right? So literally it's I have said. And notice that's the indicative, right? The subjunctive, you just take the present subjunctive of haber, right? So haya, hayas, haya, hayamos, hayáis, and then hayan, right? And then the same thing, you just, plus the participle. No sé, like espero que hayas dicho la verdad, for example, right? So anything is going to be the same thing anytime you use the subjunctive, anything that triggers a subjunctive, but you want to talk about in the past, you would do it like that, right? So let me just write it down here real quick. The example, espero que hayas dicho la verdad. So that's literally, I hope that you have said or told the truth. So it's the same thing as this he dicho, but you just or has dicho, you just change it to the subjunctive because espero que triggers the subjunctive. So notice the present perfect, you use the present tense of haber, and then the participle. And this is the present tense, but subjunctive mood here, right? So the pluperfect, or past perfect, it's sometimes called pluscuamperfecto in Spanish, actually uses the imperfect of haber, right? So había, habías, había, habíamos, habíais, habían. And then again, just you add the participle afterwards, right? And so the name is weird, mainly because it would sound weird to say the imperfect perfect. So we'll use a different term for that. And in another video, I'll talk more about like why exactly that it uses that term as well, right? You can see the English term pluperfect actually comes from that pluscuamperfecto. It's basically the imperfect perfect, but we just use this different name, right? So the subjunctive forms of that are going to be hubiera, hubieras, hubiera, hubiéramos, hubierais, hubieran, and then add the participle. So let's just change this to the past here. Esperaba que hubieras dicho la verdad. So I hoped that you had said or told the truth. So we just step back, right? Because we're in the past tense now. We have the past tense, this is imperfect, and then we use the subjunctive because this triggered the subjunctive, right? If we don't have the subjunctive triggered, then we don't need it, right? So había pensado que ibas a venir, for example, right? So that's literally like, I had thought that you were going to come. Okay, so if the present perfect is the present tense plus participle, the future perfect then is going to be the future plus participle. So that's habré, habrás, habrá, habremos, habréis, habrán plus participle. And then there technically is a future subjunctive. Let me jump back. Okay, there technically is a future subjunctive, but it's just so rarely used that we won't even worry about talking about that. But again, so if this meant I have said, and this would be I had said, then this would be I will have said. And then the conditional, just to round it off, habría, habrías, habría, habríamos, habríais, habrían. And so this would be I would have said, right? That's what the conditional is. I would have, you would have said, he, she, it would have said, etc. And then while there is technically a future perfect, the subjunctive that we're just going to ignore right now, there is no conditional subjunctive, right? So this would never have anything in it, right? This slot. So that's the main thing with the forms, right? The trickiest thing I think is just remembering all these forms, right? And then remembering the irregular participles. Notice also a little bit with terminology. So most places we call it the present perfect, presente perfecto, but in some places they actually call it the preterito perfecto, which can be a little bit confusing, right? But the main thing is just when we're talking about a perfecto, a perfect tense, it's haber, some form of haber, plus a participle. When it includes a participle, that's what makes it a perfect tense. So that's the first use. You use the participle, the past participle, participio, in perfect tenses. Another time that you use it is as an adjective. So for example, me gustan los huevos revueltos. We have revolver, and then the past participle of that is an irregular one, like we saw with decir is dicho, hacer is hecho, volver is vuelto, right? And then we just add the re in front of it, right? Revuelto. But in this case, notice that up here, it's a perfect tense and it's coming after some form of haber, any of these forms, right? Some form of haber. Here, it's not coming after haber. It's actually an adjective that's describing that noun. So when it's acting as an adjective, then it has to agree with the noun, right? So this is masculine plural And so we make this masculine plural. Whereas up here, it's always going to be o, dicho, dicho, he dicho, has dicho, ha dicho, hemos dicho, etc. It doesn't matter who's saying it, what they're talking about. When it's after haber, it's always just going to be that form, right? But when it's an adjective, not after haber, in this case after huevos, it's going to agree with what we're talking about. Son mujeres casadas. Casar, in this case, to marry or to be married in this case, right? So then it's regular casado, right? But then we change it because it's las mujeres, so we make it feminine plural, right? So here's our noun, and then here's our adjective describing that noun. And so that's the basic thing. It's fairly common. So you just take if you want to take a verb and turn it into an adjective, you're going to use the participle, and it's going to agree with the noun, just like all adjectives always do. And then the other case would be the passive voice. And I'm going to do another video about the passive voice in general, but let's look at just real quick. So I'll talk more about what's the purpose of the passive voice and all that, and how is it formed. More details about that in another video. But just for the moment, let's take Simón abrió la puerta. Simón opened the door. So that's active voice. Now let's make it passive, right? So it's going to be la puerta fue abierta por Simón. It's going to be the door was opened by Simón. So here we have the verb is abrir, and it's another irregular, right? So this one was regular, casado, but revolver was irregular, revuelto. Abrir is another irregular, right? So this is going to be abierto. And so here we can call it's sometimes it's called a predicate adjective, right? But it's an adjective that's describing la puerta. And so it's la puerta, feminine singular, so we end it with a feminine singular ending. And notice in this case, it's after fue, right? So it can change. Whereas up here, after haber, it's never going to change. So let's just give another parallel, similar example to make that point. Simón, instead of abrió la puerta, right, open to the door, let's say Simón ha abierto la puerta. Right? And so that's going to be Simón has opened the door. So here, because it's after from haber, it's just going to stay masculine singular, that form, right? Even though we got a feminine thing here. But then it would change if we make it passive voice, right? So then it would become la puerta ha sido abierta por Simón, right? So it's the door has been opened by Simón. So here we had was opened, and now it's become has been opened. And again, in this case, it's not after haber, right? It's after ser. This is the present perfect of ser. And so it changes, right? It's an adjective that modifies that. Bien. So I hope that helps. I'm more than happy to discuss it with you individually, or answer any questions you have, clarify anything that was unclear. I can make another video that clarifies it even more or gets into even more detail. Just let me know, and I'll see you in the next video. Hasta luego.